Good afternoon. How are you today? Well, it's a little cooler, and I've been spoiled already, even though we've only had a couple of warm days. So I probably have excess clothing on, but I feel warm, so that's good. The winds are terrible. So, what's new today? Let's talk about, I think there are a couple of things that have gone wrong. One is, you're familiar with Daunte Wright, who was shot, they claimed accidentally, at a stop by police with questionable probable cause, a typical situation of driving while black, or running or practicing track and being black. But in this case, what happened is the officer, Kim Potter, shot Daunte Wright and she killed him. She claims it was an accident. She really was aiming to shoot with a taser, but instead she shot with a gun, and they prosecuted her for manslaughter. The family thought it should have been murder. The agreement of the facts is that she certainly was reckless, and the heft of a gun and the heft of a taser, if you ever held them in your hand, are both very different. And they were kept in separate places so as not to be confused when you reached for one or the other. The maximum under the guidelines she could have gotten was 9 years, and the prosecution asked for 7, and the mom and family members gave the most heart-wrenching declarations of love for their departed son, brother, relation. And at the end of it, you would think it would melt the hardest hearts possible. But the judge cried instead as she went below the 7 years asked by the government and below the guidelines to give this officer 2 years. I think that was too low. I think that was wrong. And I think there's the problem of a judge identifying with a defendant. This is one of the problems of white-collar crime, and perhaps being too lenient. And of course she gets credit for time served. That's not a question. But in the end, she won't serve 2 years in custody. She'll serve 16 months. I think it's a miscarriage of justice, and it sends the wrong signal about how we treat racial injustice. And I think it's racial not just because the victim was a person of color and the officer was white, but because I think there was a built-in prejudice, and I don't know if anybody did any research on her emails and things like that to see if that's the case. But 2 years is too little, even without that investigation. So that's number one. Another thing that I have trouble with is, I think language matters. And I guess that's not unusual for a guy like me who spends a lot of his life writing and talking, mostly in court, but also in political environments and on the TV, and like I'm doing right now. And as a kid, I would study words, even in high school. And I had this theory that if I could just learn enough words, I would be able to think better. The jury's out on that question. But here's a change that really is annoying to me. We've been talking about a pandemic and an epidemic, which comes from the outside that assaults us. And now everybody wants to say, oh, it's no longer an epidemic or a pandemic, it's endemic. Well, endemic means it is a natural characteristics of a person or of a particular case or group. This virus is not of us. This virus came and assaulted us. So why would people start changing the language? Because the language, they hope, will dictate the behavior, even though it's at the risk of the people who are using this language. And I hate to say it, but our own capitalism gets in the way of our own safety. And we know that from environmental abuses, what firms spread, which compromises the health of people rather than do it right and undercut their bottom line. In this case, the mandate, unstated, is to get people to work and spending money and raising money and just assume the risk. And that's not right, because people are dying by the thousands every day right now, and we're acting as if it's, a skinned knee or something. And that's just wrong. Our leaders are failing us, in other words. The other thing is Ukraine. This is like the phenomenon that seized our political class. They spent a whole year arguing about how we should, take care of internal improvements, how we should get all of these monies, billions of dollars. And they never could get agreement, and they knew it from the beginning, and they kind of misled us along the way, including Democrats, my friends, who was like, just around this corner, we're going to pass it. And now we're doing the same thing with Ukraine. The separatists some of them are leaving the nation, I think, to make way for the Russians. And it looks like they're going to choose as their launching point where they've been fighting in the eastern part of Ukraine. At the same time, it's got to be reassuring to Ukraine that Zelensky was thinking of coming to Washington tomorrow for a meeting, which looks an awful lot like Afghanistan, where the leader fled when the going got tough. They fled the country. So I think that's what we have, the fear that we have here, that Zelensky will do the same thing. What's my wrap-up? I guess my wrap-up is this is a sorry profile for the land of the free and the home of the brave on almost all scores. The judge failed us today, in my opinion. The public officials who are talking about the virus is endemic to whom we are, and our leaders up and down across the spectrum are talking like, oh yeah, Putin, he could settle this and walk away. He'll find an off-ramp. No. What they don't understand is that Putin is an ideologue. He believes what he's doing. He believes what he's doing is historic. He believes that Russia was cheated in World War II, which is similar to what Hitler thought, and after World War I. And he is going to, as carefully as possible, plan an invasion that allows them to take over that country. And that, I suspect, will not be the end of it. So, it's a little chillier. Maybe tomorrow will be warm. So, nice visiting with you. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.